Calling the meeting to order tonight at 7 p.m. For the audience today, the City of Glendora utilizes a hybrid meeting format to allow for participation both in person and virtually. In consideration of others and the business conducted tonight, please silence your phones and any electronic devices, and please refrain from speaking until you're recognized. This is a public meeting for the community of Glendora. We appreciate and respect your participation here tonight. Madam Clerk, will you please conduct roll call?
Thank you, Chair. At this time, I would like to conduct an oral roll call and request that each commissioner respond with present when their name is called. Commissioner Becerra,
Here.
Commissioner Davis,
Present.
Commissioner Faber,
Present.
Vice Chair Norwood,
Present.
and Chair Koss.
Present.
All commissioners are present. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, Commissioner Faber will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, does anyone wish to reorder or add any items to the agenda tonight? No? Okay, seeing none, we will go ahead and open public comment period. At this time, I invite members of the public to address the Planning Commission. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, speaking once, both on and off agenda items. All questions should be directed through the presiding officer. This is your time to speak uninterrupted. If you're in attendance, please fill out a speaker card and submit it to the recording administrator before the close of the public comment period. Once recognized, you would advance to the platform, state your name and the subject matter that you wish to discuss. If you're participating via Zoom, please select the raise hand icon in Zoom before the end of the public comment period. Once recognized, you will receive a request to unmute, state your name and the subject matter. Do we have any public comment cards tonight?
Thank you, Chair. At this time, I do want to set a really quick reminder that for those that have submitted public comment cards specifically for public hearings that are going to be held tonight, those are going to be separate. Each public hearing will have its own public testimony period. Anybody that would like to submit any comment related to anything outside of that, you can either raise your hand or submit a comment card at this point. I don't see that there's been any requests via Zoom to give public comment. There's been no emails that have been received. And no public comment cards for this particular public comment period.
Okay, then at this time, I'm going to close this public comment period. And I will invite each commissioner to make a statement or report. Commissioner Becerra?
I have nothing to report.
Okay. Vice Chair Norwood?
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt really quick. We do have somebody that raised their hand.
Okay. All right,
Mary Ellen, we're going to ask that you unmute.
so we'll reopen public comment period.
Thank you. Reopen public comment
Okay.
period. We do have one person that's raised their hand.
Okay,
I'm afraid that I have, that I'm not correct. I wanted to comment regarding the Silent Ranch Dreamland project. Will that be called later?
That is a public hearing, correct. So we will call for public testimony at that time.
All right, I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Okay.
no worries. Okay, we'll open, close public comment again for right now. And Vice Chair Norwood, did you have any comments?
I have nothing at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Davis?
Nothing right now. Thank you.
Commissioner Faber?
Nothing to report right now.
Okay, and at this time, I also have no comments. Okay, right now I'm going to invite Community Development Director Jeff Kugel and Assistant City Attorney Lana Lehman to provide statements.
No comments.
Okay. So right now I'm inviting Senior Planner Hans Friedel to report on our end of the year update on Senate Bill 9.
Well, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Here providing my end of year update. Here to report that we've had continued interest, at the counter, questions, emails, that sort of thing, phone calls. It sort of ebbed and flowed. But unlike our previous updates, we have received one application. So we received it in October. So we've now officially have one active SB 9 application. It's up on the screen there. So I did de-identify it because we do have to, avoid any appearance of it being a discretionary act or hearing or anything like that. But this is an interesting example, and I've included it as just an example of maybe some we could see more of in the future. We have a roughly 10,000 square foot lot, so not a extremely large lot or anything like that. Pretty typical of things throughout the city in our single family zones. In yellow is the primary or existing residence, the house that's there now. And then this is going to be one that does not include a lot split. And as I've reported earlier, there's been a lot of issues with folks interested in the lot splits, both due to, the hurdles really to do that are, issues with getting financing or adjusting the financing on an existing loan and getting sort of bank support or for them to figure out how to even do that. And then all the engineering and other, surveying and other issues that goes along with that application. However, this is one that I had expected to see earlier in the year, which is essentially no lot split and just two additional dwelling units or 80. So it's on, it doesn't matter which is which because the standards for these are the same. So in the blue, you've got left or right an ADU, and then the other one was a secondary SB9 unit. So here we have a total of 3 total dwelling units in this proposal. The architecture will have to match of those new units with the existing house. And this application has met our standards that we have in our policy framework, which we had before you earlier in the year. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do any commissioners have any questions?
I have one quick question. You
Sure.
put there you go.
Final.
So I guess is SB9, I thought that was the lot split. These look like just ADU units that are being placed on the property. Is this part of the SB9? Or, because I thought the SB9 was really about the lot splits and being able to have the primary residence, a second primary, and add ADUs accordingly.
Yes, it's a good question. So SB9 provides a pathway to create additional residential dwelling units through a lot split or without a lot split. So the total is up to 4 units on the area of the existing lot. There's something like 20 different combinations because they can be attached or detached, that sort of thing. We talked a lot in our policy framework about what happens if there is a lot split and how to sort of treat that. However, SB9 does allow, and again, there's a lot of combinations, and I do encourage folks to look at our handout that's online, but you can do in this case, a primary residence, 2 extra units, so an ADU, and then a secondary SB9 unit, which those are the same size, roughly up to 800 to 1,000 square feet each. And you could even, in this case, do a junior accessory dwelling unit inside that existing house for 4. So you don't have to do a lot split to get to the 4. However, you could do a lot split if it was feasible and have 2 on each side and then sell off the other lot.
Okay.
There's some additional standards with the lot split, if you'll recall, that we talked about. There is a owner, the applicant has to be the owner. They have to agree to live there for 3 years, that sort of stuff. So some different standards for that.
So this would fall under SB9 because there's 2 80 units as opposed to just the single ADU.
Exactly. One's an ADU, one is the secondary SB9 unit. So basically it falls under the ADU law and SB9 law.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Davis, you had a question?
So I noticed on this and in a briefing yesterday, so there's a larger driveway going on here.
Mhm.
But to be clear, there are no garages now, or is there still a garage there?
This one, if I do recall, has a garage, right? Where if you go see, there's like a circular driveway on the left. However, I will point out with the
And where I'm going with that is
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
getting to parking,
sure.
cars on the street and stuff like that eventually. So you weave that in there.
Sure. So, no, it's a good question. With under the ADU law, so one of those units in the back is the ADU, which one doesn't matter. We can have, we cannot require parking for the ADU. For the secondary SB9 unit, if it's outside of a half mile of basically the Gold Line station, we can require 1 parking space. Then what happens is the primary residence falls under SB9. So you have a primary, secondary, so we can require 2 parking spaces. So as long as they can park 2 cars on that lot outside of the front setback, which they could in this case, in the existing garage or in that driveway outside of the front setback, then they meet the state, what we're allowed to require. And there, I will add on that one, on this one, because they do recognize, and I recall talking to this person, that they do need a parking space for the ADU as well. So they figured out, if you'll notice on the circular driveway, how it goes straight in on the left and then on the right, there's a spot too. So they've tried to create a situation or condition where they can have one spot for at least each of the units.
So they've
Off-street.
taken it upon themselves to create additional parking. That wasn't necessarily a requirement by the city to do so.
That's correct.
Okay, so following Governor Newsom's penchant for electric vehicles in the state, do these have to be charge ready?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. Not that
Any
I'm aware
provision
of.
for that anywhere on a property under SB 9 or SB 10 to require charge ready? I know things have to be built new solar ready.
Mhm. I'm not aware of a requirement that they have to be charge ready for each of the units, because they don't, again, we can't require parking for ADUs, for example.
And that's where I'm going with
yeah.
that. Where as we force cars out onto the street or out into driveways, that flies in the face of electrification of cars in the state of California by 2030, 2035.
35. Yeah, that's a
Okay.
good question. Yeah, I would assume that if they have electrical, outlets in these units and they have to meet building code, electrical code, that sort of thing, they could be rigged to charge vehicles.
Yeah, but you're not parking any vehicles all the way back there. Everything's got to
Oh.
be on the front. And how do you, okay, are you, 3 vehicles, 4 vehicles, 5 vehicles on this property, some on the street? How do you incorporate electrification when you're doing this?
Yeah, it's a good question.
More rhetorical than anything, but thank you for your presentation.
I have a
Okay,
question.
Commissioner Becerra?
So do we require some type of landscaping in the front yard so they can't take up the entire front yard as parking for all of those units?
That's a good question. That's our kind of driveway question that we sometimes talk about. We don't have sort of like an impervious cover limit or something like that in terms of paving over front yards. In this case, we do have some policy on, the lot, for example, has to be at least 70 feet wide on its street frontage to have or be eligible for a circular driveway. This is a great example. That's one of the reasons I really wanted to include this as an example, because it kind of has everything kind of going on. So you do have that. So like a smaller lot wouldn't be eligible if it was less than 70 feet wide for that. I can't think, but if somebody just wanted to pave over their entire front yard for parking, we don't really have a prohibition on that in our current code.
Thank you. Commissioner Faber, any questions?
I guess I didn't get to look at the handout, but in the handout, it would show setbacks from property lines and other properties in SB 9.
Yes. So under state law for both SB 9 and ADUs says that cities can't basically impose greater than a 4-foot side or rear setback for ADUs or SB 9 units. In Glendora, we also, if the units are detached, which these are, then it can be a 3-foot side or rear setback. The front setback under the current law can still be the minimum setback in the zoning district, 25 feet or whatever this one is, R1 zoning. So these ones actually, I believe, that's a little bit out of my, so I can see it better on this one here. They actually went above our minimum setback. So it's like 6 feet on the back and side. So they provided a little more room just on their own accord.
Thank you.
I just had one question. I know there's the requirement, we talked about this extensively, I know in the past, and there's a requirement for the owner to occupy. But there's really, do we have any way of enforcing that? I mean, if they say, well, the owner has to occupy this for 3 years, and say the owner says, okay, yeah, I will, and then they don't, is there really any way to enforce that?
Well, there's a couple of things there. So first off, the owner occupancy requirement is an affidavit that they intend to live there for 3 years. It's basically the wording, and that only is triggered when there's a lot split. So this doesn't have a lot split, so it doesn't have that.
Okay.
There is also an owner occupancy requirement in our code for junior accessory dwelling units. So if they're not doing that with this one, where that person, they can sell the house, but then that new owner has to agree to live in the house or in the JDU or something. So in this case, there really isn't one in terms of enforcement. there's not really a mechanism. And I think what would happen is that language of intends to occupy would sort of give them a bit of relief. However, we do, per conversations with our attorney, Lana, basically, is the owner has to be the applicant. So the owner has to live there, has to be the applicant, basically, to do like a lot split.
Okay.
But yet so far we haven't received any applications for one, just interest.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for your presentation.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Okay. At this time, we're going to move on to item 3, public hearing. The consideration of a resolution to approve tentative tract map 72413 variance and developmental plan review for a private gated development of 13 new single-family residential lots, 2 private streets, a remainder parcel designated for open space and flood control structures, project number PLN 140024. Applicant is Dreamland Investments LLC, location 950 North Silent Ranch Drive. At this time, we are declaring the public hearing open, and I invite City Planner Mark Carnahan to present the staff report.
Good evening, Chair and members of the commission. Tonight, as you stated, you'll be considering the Grand Estates project, which is located on a 27 single parcel property with an address of 950 Silent Ranch Drive. The site's southerly access is Palm Drive, just west of the terminus of Grand Avenue. Here's a kind of an aerial image that shows the boundaries of the site there are in yellow, and the arrow there is pointing to what's going to be the proposed access point. The project site is generally undeveloped and vegetated, except for a single-family residential home located in the kind of the western portion of the site. It does have some remnant structures from previous uses and 3 flood control crib dams. Development has previously occurred on the project site. It was associated with a former Rancho Los Alisos, and Camp Aventura uses. In the early 1900s, Charles Silent began development of Rancho Los Alisos. As his home and landscape park had apparently orchards and rancho style housing with thatch roofs and fountains and rock paths. Later on, a portion of that property was utilized by Metro Water District for their aqueduct feeder in the 30s. In the 60s, the 3 flood control district crib dams were constructed on the northern portion of the project site. In the 50s, the Girl Scouts Camp Aventura was opened at the site. The area was cleared of orchards and 4 buildings, and tent pads were constructed, as well as planted trees and other vegetation around the camp. The original ranch house of the Rancho Los Alisos and its outbuildings were removed from the site in the late 60s. The Girl Scout camp was demolished in the early 70s. And a new residence was built on the former Rancho Los Alisos housing site in the late 70s. At present, adjacent to the site on the west is a gated community of single-family residents, undeveloped hillside areas, and a utility flood control infrastructure. Consisting of concrete drainage systems that lead out of the San Gabriel Mountains. The area south of Palm Drive. Southwest of the area is developed with single-family residential neighborhoods. To the north of the project site are obviously the mountains and undeveloped areas. And a northern portion that kind of eventually leads to the area, Angeles National Forest and city lands. To the east are hillside areas that are sparsely developed with some rural residences. And the site is also just east of the the Church of the Open Door and St. Lucy's Primary High School, which are just a short distance away to the west. So for the project itself, the project involves the following discretionary approvals. A tentative tract map to subdivide the site's approximately 27 acres. The southern 11 acres will be developed for a gated residential neighborhood of 12 new single-family residential lots, with 1 lot for 2 private streets that take single access from Palm Drive. The site's existing single-family residential house at 950 Silent Ranch will remain, and will be designated as an additional separate lot with its separate access from Silent Ranch. The northern 16 acres will be designated as a remainder parcel for preserved open space in perpetuity and a new proposed flood control debris basins. A variance request to allow grading into the 35% slope areas in the northern portion of the site, which contains moderate to steep slopes, for the construction of an access maintenance road and to demolish the site's 3 existing flood control crib dams and construct 3 new flood control debris basins that would be a bit larger and more efficient. A development plan review would be required for the hillside development and for the gated community aspect of the project. Also related is a deferred payment request related to the city's urban forestry manual's tree replacement in lieu fee, which we'll discuss later. Finally, the environmental determination on the project's California Environmental Quality Act mitigation negative declaration. So kind of an overview here. So the subject property has a general plan designation, actually has 2 general plan designations. It's quite unique. We don't have very many properties that have 2. The northern portion of this property is conservation open space, and the southern part of the property is low density residential. The low density residential designation is intended for transitional areas between the hillside areas and higher density single family residential. This allows for development of single family residential lots ranging from 10,500 to 30,000 square feet. The conservation open space designation is intended to protect areas of high scenic value, environmental habitat sensitivity, and recreation facilities, as well as it does also allow for infrastructure improvements such as the flood control. The zoning aspect of the property is again split zoning. The estate residential E7 20,000 designation is on the south, and the open space natural designation is on the north. Again, this is a split designation on a single parcel. It's unique. I should note the proposed subdivision map will put a line directly where those 2 distinctions are. So it'll be these 2 zones will now be on distinctive lots with this future request. So that will kind of clean that up or make it a little bit more clear. So onto the map, the subdivision. As previously stated, the Grand Estates project consists of 1 existing parcel. The applicant is proposing to subdivide the parcel technically into 14 fee simple lots, but they are going to consist of 12 new single family residential lots. One of those lots, 1 lot will be for an existing residence and 1 lot will be for 2 private streets. Plus there's 1 designated remainder parcel, which is the northern hillside area. It is expected that the 12 new single family residential lots within the new gated community will be developed in the future with custom homes constructed by individual lot owners as the markets will bear. So this is not a tract development by developer who will be developing each of the homes. They will be sold off individually for custom builds. The subdivision would also include shared supporting infrastructure and streetscape landscaping. So as again, these are private streets with a private gate and associated some associated landscaping, which would all be maintained by the homeowners association that would be created. A breakdown of the map is here. It basically kind of explains how each of the lots are designated. The 12 new lots there are basically kind of 4 through 14, except for lot 4, which is for the streets. The biggest lot there is obviously the designated remainder lot, and the second biggest is the streets, and then the third one is the existing house. All the new homes are, you can kind of see, range from 20,000 square feet to about 31,000 or 32,000 square feet. They're all pretty average sized in terms of the numbers there. I'm just kind of zooming in on the map a little bit because it's such a big map. So if you zoom in on the northern portion of the map, that's the hillside area or the open space portion. Note here that this area again is designated as the remainder parcel. It shows the new maintenance access road, the 3 new flood control basins, and the area involved with grading and grooming, which will be hydroseeded after grading. The variance request with the project is a request by the applicant to allow grading into the steep slope areas that exceed the 35% natural grade in this open space area for the construction of the access road again and the newer and improved debris basins that will take place. The project site is generally undeveloped at in this area, and except for the single family home, it's located in the I probably should go back up. So in the late 60s, the crib dams were constructed after a fire and mud occurrence that occurred during that time period. The flood control district built those sometime around 68 or 69 to basically help control the debris flows. These three main drainage are located on the project site's northern area, and they currently kind of control what's there. However, due to the sediment and lack of maintenance in these areas and them not functioning, I guess what on basically current standards for the flood control district, the district is request for this project site was to remove and improve each of these systems. So as stated, the northern 16 area of the project site would be open space, except for the flood control basins, which would be improved and regroomed and modified, and the slopes modified as well. The improvements to these are expected to not only enhance the improvements for the neighborhood, but also the neighborhood itself. Staff feels that there are benefits to this project because of those three basins. There's a lot of detailed engineering associated with this project site. So if there's any specific questions that come tonight or regarding that part of the project, they had the project engineers here as well tonight. I think that there's a hydrology engineer here as well as there's also our city's consulting engineer as well. Let me go back a little bit. This is a zoomed portion of the south project of the portion side. This is the 12 lots. Again, lot 1 on the east is the single family house. This is also indicating here the areas in green are the HOA maintained kind of street adjacency landscape areas that they're going to be putting into a landscape HOA maintenance requirement. So they'll have street trees and kind of a landscaping buffer at the entrance there that'll all be maintained by them. The project's development plan review is the second request. Per the municipal code, the project would require the review and approval of this development plan review, again, to allow the gated community and the hillside development. Again, the applicant is proposing these 12 custom lots. Again, these take access off of Palm Drive on the south. Just for clarification, there is an existing maintenance road on the south that takes access from Palm. It would not be in that exact location. It's being shifted. The new drive would be shifted west of the current location. Just for clarity, be on the western property line, not down the middle. If you kind of squint on the exhibit, the existing maintenance road is sort of where the lot 14 number is. It's sort of dead center on that lot. It's going to be shifted west to be the new location. The applicant is requesting, the applicant will be responsible for all related items regarding the project. He is also committed to all the CEQA required mitigation requirements, which also includes habitat restoration and all the city council approved conditions of approval that are listed in the resolution. The development and the map have been reviewed by the Los Angeles County Fire Department and cleared for the public hearing. Their conditions of approval are included as part of the resolution. The map shows that the site, how it could be developed, which includes its grading and contours and easements and utility infrastructure. All utilities would be placed underground as well. The site topography obviously varies. It's a hillside lot from north to south. There are various cross-section and elevations if we want to get into detail, but regarding the site, they're provided as part of the exhibits if we get to that point. I won't bore you with all the details on the cubic feet and the grading, but on the cut and fill aspect of the visual you see here, basically, it's an exhibit that basically shows the cut and fill of the site. In a nutshell, Most of the cuts would occur in the north, and most of the fill is going to be occurring in the south, with the overall cut and fill being basically almost balanced. But you can kind of see the areas of highlights where things are going to be occurring. And again, we have some experts here can help us with those details if we get into that. The tree part of it is the next thing that for discussion, and which we don't normally get into this depth for a project. But just to kind of to back up, the city has an urban forestry manual that provides the guidelines and specifics for pruning and planting and removal of and the care of city trees. The city considers the impact of private property trees only as part of applications that are a part of discretionary zoning approvals, such as this. So for instance, people can cut down their trees on their property. There's nothing prohibiting people from cutting down trees on their private property in a normal sense. But when you have an application that is up for consideration that's discretionary at a public hearing like this one, you are now subject to the city's policies for tree removal. And so hence what we're talking about. So trees that are removed from private property that done for the purposes of a project like this, subject to discretionary removal, are required to replace the trees on a certain replacement ratio and or pay an in lieu fee instead of the actual tree plantings. Which normally we don't get into that because it's usually a requirement. They must follow the policy. And then when you get to the landscaping plans, they usually, in most cases, they overly plant the trees because they don't have that many on site. This site, however, has a lot of trees. So based on the layest tree survey, there were two. The latest tree survey, the project property has about 835 trees on site. However, only about 635 of those trees are considered live trees with a diameter or the circumference of the tree is about 8 inches or greater. And those are the requirements to be subject to the city's tree policy. So again, it has to be live and it has to have a diameter of at least 8 inches to be subject to the policy, and it has to be proposed for removal. So, also of note, preservation of existing trees is preferred over replacement per the city's policies. The city did request that the applicant review and revise the original request sometime about a couple of years ago. And the developer did go back and review grading and did revise the application to accommodate the preservation of more trees on the site. And so now they are able to save about 184 of the qualifying trees on the site. I probably should clarify, it's 184 trees that are on the impacted area of the site. There are additional like 60 or so trees or 80 some trees on the existing house site that we're not factoring into that number. However, due to the large number of trees, again, the approximately 651 trees would be removed to allow the on-site development, of which 455 qualify again as for this policy. So as set forth by the policy, the project would be required to plant for replacement trees approximately 879 trees based on the replacement ratios. I didn't go into the replacements, but some of the trees are a 2-to-1 ratio, some are 3-to-1 replacements, some are 5-to-1 replacements, some are 6-to-1, and even for some of them are 7-to-1 replacements under a policy. So a lot of replacement trees. The project's concept landscaping plans currently identify the potential for planting of about 443 replacement trees that the developer has committed to plant as part of during the construction phase of the site. And again, that's sort of almost replanting for what was removed. So it's about 400 something trees removed, 400 something trees are being planted. However, none of the replacement numbers are what we're kind of talking about here. So since the current number of the 443 trees to be planted is less than the 879 tree replacement requirement, and lieu fee is needed for the compensation of the 436 trees that he doesn't think he's going to be able to plant as part of the project. Final numbers, obviously, these are large numbers, are going to be determined later during construction, which is going to be in a couple of years, as well as we did require that, hey, since this might be a couple of years till it gets built, we've actually also asked for the applicant to do an additional tree survey at that time to get a new assessment of what's happening in a couple of years as droughts and things happen. But on the number side of things, here's the total aspect of it. in terms of some of the numbers part of it, the financials. So the applicant is requesting a special consideration of an option to defer the payment of the cities in lieu fees for the replacement of the trees being removed during the grading and construction project. So based on the policy and our city's adopted master fee schedule, the current cost to install new trees for basically where the numbers are coming from are these kind of three numbers, basically the 360, the 1,000, and that 1,900 number. There is a larger number for 60-inch trees, which is around 5,000, but that's not really bearing here. So when you were talking about numbers, where the numbers come from, it kind of comes from those three. So the developer, again, intends to plant 443 trees. And if they will leave a balance approximately 593,000 to be paid. Again, so the applicant's request is basically for the delayed in lieu payment of that 593 trees. Again, $593,000. The 593,000, just for clarification again, is if the applicant plants the 440 something trees as well. For instance, if he didn't plant any trees, it's like a $1.something million fee. But in reality, he wants to plant trees because that's going to reduce his costs, as well as the state's going to have their own requirements for state habitat restoration plans for the north area and stuff. So they're going to be planting trees. The total numbers are not figured out right now. These are numbers, moment in time guesstimates. I'll show you some landscaping plans that they've developed with their landscape architect. They've also provided them to the Los Angeles Fuel Modification Division for approval to see the realistic ability of how many they can plant. And realistically, they think that they could plant 443. But again, that's their professional estimate at this time. That would give this balance that you're seeing there. That balance is what they're basically asking could be moved to the future homeowners to do. That 593 would then be split 12 ways, and that in lieu payment would be paid at the time of future building permits of the custom homes. So when the homeowner comes and build their custom homes in year 2 or 3 or 4, whenever that happens in the future, they would then say, okay, hey, your portion of that number divided by 12 gives you $49,000. That's $490. That's the per lot requirement. That homeowner would have to pay that $49,000 number or whatever it turns out to be at the time of their home permits are issued. That number realistically would go down under this scenario because they themselves are going to be providing custom landscaping plans for their individual lots, which will probably have trees on itself. So the number will be reduced based on the number of trees they're planting in addition as part of their project. But realistically, they will probably all be paying a certain amount. There's no way they're going to be able to provide that much. And so that is what he's asking. So in the end, the city is going to be getting our requirement met by either trees or fees. The question that is being asked by the applicant is not to pay that all up front. And one of the arguments that they would make is this isn't a development where they're a tract development where they're building all the tracts, they're doing everything together. They're subdividing the lots for custom homes, in which case they don't know the fate of the individual lots. That's up to the fate of the future buyer and how they want to develop that land. They can't plant lots in certain areas of the lots where they know something could occur, as well as it's a large amount. That's probably how they're going to say. On that note, again, a tree survey will be performed later in the future. And these again are our estimates. The city arborist is here tonight to actually help explain these numbers and kind of the logic behind how this could work. Again, this would be administered by the city's staff. We'd have to keep track of this and be kind of an ongoing thing we'd have to do. But we think it is feasible. We'd be responsible for the accounting, but the ultimate will we get our money would be required at the time of permit payment of the homes. And we only have one thing similar to this. We have La Colina has a per lot requirement for their subdivision zoning requirement. When that was created, there was a $200 and something thousand fee associated with that we did base that on a per lot requirement. So every time a La Colina house, for instance, gets built, they have to provide a check for that share of that one out of the 120 whatever homes share of that. And that gets paid on a per lot thing. So we do have experience with doing it. This would be a little bit more administrative part of it. But on that note, I just want to quickly go through the landscaping plans that are not for approval. These are concept plans that they're kind of showing that kind of say like, look, they've done their work. They've hired landscape architects. They've gone through the process to show that they do think that they could plant a good number of trees as compensation, but this is where they're at. So this is lot one. That's the existing Silent Ranch house. That's no change. All those existing trees that are on the site are there. That's all this is showing. And then as we go through this, you can kind of see, here's the northern portion of and you can kind of see all the trees that are going to be new. All the circles you're seeing are basically new trees, and all the clouds you see are basically groves of existing trees that are going to be preserved. And I know these are really hard on the scale that everybody's seeing with them. So I'm going to kind of just thumb through these and give you a generality here. Again, this is the kind of the eastern portion of the open space basin area. Again, all the circles are trees. This is the northern end of the residential portion. Again, the commitment to plant the trees kind of around the pad areas is what you kind of see. Here's another portion of the homes. Again, all the areas that are kind of shaded there and that kind of pattern, that's where the new home pads would go and left vacant. And all the areas around there is what the applicant's committing to do at the time of the initial development. And again, and this is the south entrance that here kind of shows the entrance and the gate area. So that being said, just kind of a more kind of visioning of the project, the applicant did provide kind of a couple illustrations of what the site could potentially look at, so we can kind of get an understanding of its context within the neighborhood. The colored area here is kind of showing the streets and the streets and the development, how it could lay out with the adjacent development to the east and west. This is the same area, a little different view, kind of a bird's eye perspective that's showing it kind of at an oblique that's a little bit more three-dimensional. That's showing the same area, how it kind of would integrate within existing neighborhoods. This is kind of an image that was part of the CEQA document to show context and change. And this is kind of showing what it would look like from the public street perspective on Palm Drive. Again, this is showing what the entrance would look like. Basically, the one on the left obviously is the existing, the one on the right is the new. And it gives us here, you can also see the new entry point at the street there, some retaining walls, and the new raised pad for that lot 14, which is the first pad there. This is another visual kind of, if you were driving into the project site, you were kind of mid-block, right where the two private streets kind of fork off, and you're looking north. So again, you're seeing kind of the raised pads, the street, and kind of the retaining walls and walls. Again, existing and proposed concepts. So another part of the CEQA document was kind of a visualization of kind of the impacts in terms of the greater community. So to kind of understand the potential hillside view changes to the greater community, these visuals were created. This would be kind of looking from Sierra Madre, looking north up Grand Avenue. And so this is the existing, this is the proposed, and this is what they're calling the X-ray view. So if you were to take away all the trees and the hill and all that, that's where the site would be from that intersection. So they kind of go back. It's there. It's just kind of it is the way the topography and the landscaping works. That would be the perspective actually before and after. The Sierra Madre, a kind of mid-block view. I think this is a little bit east of the project site. Kind of the same three visuals were created. This is the kind of the existing. That was at west. Sorry, west. And then this would be their X-ray view kind of thing of where it sits on the site from that Sierra Madre perspective. So from the California Environmental Quality Act perspective, which I'd say is the bulk of the materials, paper materials tonight. The city of Glendora was the lead agency responsible for preparing the environmental documents that determined as well as its discretionary actions. We did hire a consultant to help city staff with this. We hired a environmental consulting company called Dudek, and we've been working with them for several years on this proposal. The city completed what's called an initial study on the project in accordance with CEQA. And that draft initial study concluded that the project will not have a significant effect on the environment with the inclusion of mitigation measures. And the draft mitigated negative declaration has been prepared. This environmental determination is basically, again, the bulk of what you see on the materials. That's why that took so long to download probably everything. It's a very detailed and very extensive analysis. We have a couple consultants here tonight that can hopefully talk about any of those aspects of that analysis that needs to be discussed tonight. During the draft documents public review period, which was in July, the city received 6 written comments from the state and from government agencies. We received comments from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the County Sanitation District, County Fire, Metro Water District, and one private individual. The city's written responses to all these comments was included in the packet as part of the response to comments portion of it. It's kind of in the very back. And the consultants can answer anything regarding those comment letters that you might want answered. I should note the CEQA mitigation portion of the project. There's a lot, so I'm not going to go into each of them. There were about 27 mitigation environmental requirements that are associated with the project that the applicant again has agreed to and will be imposed on the project. And again, the consultant can go into any of those in more in detail that you might want. Noticing wise, notice was provided on November 24th of this public hearing in the San Gabriel Valley Examiner. Mailed notices were sent out to all property owners within 500 feet of the subject site, as well as the notice was posted on the paper notice was posted on the signboard that's been on the site for a while, which is located on Palm Drive. All that occurred on November 24th. Notice of the Planning Commission again is the Planning Commission tonight is an advisory body. So please remember, you're not taking action tonight on approval. You're making a recommendation for the city council to take action on this item. That being said, the city council will also have its own public hearing notices that will go out separately in the future once that date is determined. Recommendations for tonight, closing up. We're requesting the public hearing be opened, and we're recommending that the public planning commission make a recommendation to the city council for approval to adopt the environmental CEQA initial study and mitigated negative declaration, to adopt the resolution approving the project and its tentative track map, its variance, and its development plan review. In summary, staff feels that it could be supported as it is providing additional housing units, which are needed for the city. It is helping to improve the flood debris control basins at the site and for the community. It has landscaping and other common street tree areas that are incorporated as part of the HOA, which an HOA is a good thing to maintain the private streets and such. Guest parking is provided for the project for along the street, as well as the homes will have their own individual driveways. And visual impacts for the development, we believe, are reduced. They had walls that were originally really tall. Those have all been reduced. So they're walls that you would see within the neighborhood in terms of heights that are already existing within most of the community in that area. With that, I think staff's going to conclude. Again, there's a lot of questions that could come up tonight that could be answered by a plethora of consultants that are here, or city staff from various divisions. So again, some of these people are participating via Zoom. So please accommodate extra time for that connection if that's needed. With that said, I will probably open it up for public hearing, as well as the applicant will be making a short presentation.
Okay, thank you. That was very extensive. Thank you for that. At this time, I would like to invite the applicant, Alan Chow, is it? From Dreamland Investments to address the commission. You have 10 minutes.
All right. Good evening, Honorable Chair Cost, Honorable Vice Chair Norwood, and Honorable Commissioner Becerra, Davis, and Faber. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Alan Cho, and I'm the managing partner for Dreamland Investment LLC. And my team and I are responsible for the proposed project presented here tonight for your consideration. First of all, I would like to thank Director Jeff Kugo and Mr. Mark Canahan and Ms. Miriam Marks, Raquel Falco, Aegis Mashuska, and all other involved staff members from the city of Glendora for their help and guidance offered to our team members over the last 8 years, navigating this complicated, long and frustrating development process, to say the least. I also want to thank my invaluable team members. Many of them are here tonight in person and others via Zoom and ready to answer any of your questions. In addition, I have reviewed the city's draft resolution and I'm prepared to accept all terms outlined in the city resolution as part of the conditional approval. So without further ado, I will turn this over to our team leader, also the civil engineer for this project, Miss Amy Blissell. Amy, thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Amy Bledsoe. I'm the project civil engineer. My colleague Samuel Jerome and I have worked with the city staff and our other teammates here to prepare the tentative tract map for the development that we were looking at there. I just want to briefly discuss a few key aspects of the project. Mark did a great job in presenting all of that. There are just a few things that I want to kind of touch on and reiterate. First is the existing conditions of the site. Those are described in detail in Dudek's historical resources technical report that was provided. There have been multiple uses of the property in the past. And as such, there's been grading and multiple structures built on site and then removed, including homes, fountains, reservoirs, retaining walls, roads, concrete drainage channels, and the installation of a 10-foot diameter MWD water pipeline and tunnel and various other facilities. Additionally, numerous trees have been planted on site over the years. Because of the grading, trenching, and construction and general use, most of the lower portion of the property really should not be considered, because it's been disturbed, it should not be considered as pristine natural area. Also existing on site, Mark also mentioned that in the upper remainder parcel, there are 3 crib dams that were built in the early 70s. Those dams are to be replaced with new, larger, and more efficient debris basins. The new basins are a requirement of LA County Flood Control District and will be built in compliance with current flood control standards, which includes the construction of a road that will allow crews to access the basins to perform inspections and maintenance. This construction of these basins is not only a benefit, of course, to this subdivision, but it's also a significant benefit to all the downstream residents. I think that's important to remember. Regarding the trees being removed for the project, I just want to make sure that you understand that more than half of the trees that are being removed, that's about 53% of the trees are being removed, are being done so for the sole purpose of building those debris basins and the flood control access road. Significant efforts have been made to design slopes and building pads in a way that will minimize removal of existing trees. About 240 existing trees are being protected in place on site. And 132 of them are within the lower area where the new lots and new streets will be. 108 of them will be saved because they're in the upper portion of the lots and surrounding the upper areas and the sides of the new debris basins. Lastly, regarding the request for variance to grade in natural areas exceeding 35% slope gradient, I feel also that it's important to understand that all the grading that's proposed in the steep natural areas is for the construction of those debris basins and the access road leading to the debris basins only. That's all of that grading in the 35% areas are for those debris basins. In other words, if the existing crib dams that are there now, we're doing an adequate job of protecting downstream properties now, then the new debris basins would not be needed and there would be no need for a variance. Yeah. Also, without the construction of the debris basins, there would be half as many trees removed and a significant decrease to the amount of grading required to complete the project. So that's it for me right now. I'm going to hand over the rest of our time to Brent Travis of West Consultants. He should be on Zoom. He prepared the hydrology study and he's going to talk to you more about the importance of those basins. I'm here the rest of the night. If you have questions, I'll do my best to answer. Okay. Thanks for your consideration.
Yeah, I see a Brent Travis that's on the line. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, can you see me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Oh, excellent. So already Amy and Mark have done a great job of touching upon the debris basins. I know that's a big deal as the engineer for those. I just kind of wanted to bring up some other aspects of it, some more details that might be helpful in terms of considering the project. Again, there's been a review of this. What hasn't been mentioned is that in 2014, the Colby fire wreaked havoc on the upper part of that mountain and turned it into a burned watershed. From a hydrologic perspective, what happens then is that flow that comes off the mountain is essentially doubled. That flow picks up ash and other debris. And so what was originally 175 CFS during the 50-year storm is now 350 CFS. This is very dangerous, and we know it's dangerous, just to imagine it, but also we've seen it wreak horrible damage. In 1999 in Vargas, Venezuela, you may be aware that this sort of thing, these bulk flows killed 30,000 people. In 2010 in China, it killed 1,000 people. And of course, right there in Santa Barbara in 2018, the same situation killed 23 people and close to $200 million in damages. So this is a serious thing. We considered it that way. Just to give you an idea of what that 350 CFS is like, that's the equivalent of one Olympic-sized pool every 4 minutes. So under current conditions, that was what we would expect to be coming out at the intersection of Palm and Grand. Again, we know about these crib walls. It sounded great to us to be able to use those. We went to the county, we went to the flood control, and tried to see if we could, take advantage of this. But there's some problems with them. Number one was access. We couldn't access them, and then even if we could, we couldn't get a truck into it to be able to clear it out. And they're undersized to begin with. So that ended up being something that we just realized we couldn't do. So we worked with flood control to come up with new debris basins that met the requirements and actually ended up cutting that outflow in half. So we're very happy with that. But we didn't stop there. We also controlled the flow coming off the site, now clear water with the debris taken out. And rather than having it come out into the road the way it is now, which is uncontrolled, a lot of it going into the storm drain, we control how much is going into the storm drain, and we will control how much is being outlet to the road in a way that's the safest for the people in the area. All right, what's the upside of this? We're going to protect 21 homes directly downstream with these basins, and with the control onto the storm drain system, potentially hundreds more. So I'll just stop by saying, this is obviously a real danger in this neighborhood. And, if these debris basins aren't going to be built here, somebody's going to need to do this because the neighborhood is in real danger. I'll stop there.
Okay, anything else from, okay, so we will, at this point, we will go ahead and invite members of the public to address the commission to provide public testimony. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes speaking once on this public hearing item. This is your time to speak uninterrupted. Once recognized, please proceed to the podium, state your name, and all questions should be directed through the presiding officers. We have public comments.
Yes, I do want to mention, however, that we also received emails that were sent to the commission, made available to the public and are on the website for public inspection. 2 of those came from the Robb family, one of which has also submitted a public comment card to give comment or give testimony at this time.
Okay. Okay. All right, Phil Dudar, please proceed with your public comment, sir, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, I'd like to say that the previous city manager and the planning director met with the community sometime back in 2013 to address some of the concerns that we had. And it was still early in the entitlement stage, and we were assured that we would be updated as things progress. Fast forward 9 years later, we were never updated, and the developer never had any kind of a community meeting to show us what his proposal is and to answer any questions that we may have. Instead, well, we're having to provide comments in a one-way fashion. Notwithstanding that, I do have a couple of concerns that I'd like to share. Let me start with water availability. I mean, they say in California, whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting. And right now, every developer in the state is out trying to hustle water rights to support their developments. And we in Glendora, we have been cutting back on water, letting our lawns go brown. And I'd hate to think that we've been doing all of this stuff to make water available to this development. Now, going through the 1,600 pages, there is talk about making available water rights to support the development. However, it is extremely wishy-washy. And a condition like number 46 is the applicant may be required to provide water rights. I don't know what may means. It either means he's not required or we're just pushing the can down the road. It really needs to be strong that the developer shall provide water rights sufficient to sustain this development prior to map recordation. Second item that I have concern with is road improvements. I am concerned that there is a bottleneck on Grand Avenue, right where it terminates. It goes from a 2-lane roadway to a 1-lane roadway for about 200 feet and then opens up on Palm to another 200 road to 2-lane roadways. And we're adding 12 units here. Now, nothing against you, Fred, but when the Robb property gets developed and subdivided, it's probably going to be a 4-way split with 2 lots fronting Grand Avenue. And rightfully, the city at that point is going to tell them, you need to dedicate the remainder of Grand Avenue. So it'll be 2-lane highway all the way across. And it's beyond me that we would be asking for a 4-lot split to do this, but not for a 12-unit subdivision that is proposed. Now, so you know, when this thing, it can get blocked, and this is a picture of what happens when a tree fell and blocked the roadway. I'll leave it as part of my testimony. Last thing I'd like to say, if I may, it has to do with the fire hazard. The area is in a severe fire hazard zone per CAL FIRE. And at this point, all of us that live north of Sierra Madre are having trouble getting flood insurance. I'm sorry, fire insurance. So, I mean, those guys are saying it is risky business to live there. We're not going to underwrite it. Do we really feel comfortable putting more life and property at risk at this point? So food for thought. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Fred Rabb.
I do want to mention for anybody who is attending via Zoom, if you would like to give public testimony, please use the raise hand icon so that you can be identified and called when your time is up. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good evening. My name's Fred Robb. I've lived on the end of North Grand there for a long time, maybe for almost 50 years. I was here during the 69 flood. I saw what it did to Rainbow Canyon next door, which is a bigger but comparable canyon. The erosion structures are still up there. They're intact. They do what they're supposed to do. They don't require maintenance. They do not hold back debris. They keep the debris from coming off the mountain in the first place. Rainbow was developed with homes and the erosion structures were left. No debris basins were put in. I realize the canyons are different and the places where the homes are is different, but to misrepresent that the erosion structures are failing and need to be replaced, the county didn't come along and say, we need these debris basins. They were asked by the developer what they have to do in order to build these 12 homes to bottleneck a canyon. And the answer was debris basins higher on the hill looming over Glendora, which we will all see. And it's not necessary. The county is not proposing this. The developer is proposing this in order to build his project. And that has been totally misrepresented tonight by this gentleman especially, who's the supposed expert. I've, as a kid, been up there when these structures were in. They've changed very little. There's very little, if any, erosion around them. Imagine a bowling alley and the ball is the water and it's coming down those mountains at huge speed. And when it hits those erosion structures, it drops 30 feet or more. That takes away the energy. It no longer pulls the sides of the mountain down, and not as much true dirt's going to come down. 1 million cubic yards came down in '69 through Rainbow. They lost one house. They had a lot of mud to clean up in the street. Everybody survived. Property values are astronomically higher than they ever were before. Again, this gentleman has used scare tactics telling about Chinese floods. That's just ridiculous. It almost brings tears to my eyes because it's not fair. The representation is so one-sided and has been unfair from the beginning when the developer cut down many of the trees that he's now being forced to replace, but he blames it on the Colby fire or disease or insects. I throw up my hands. It's totally being misrepresented. What'll be on that hillside is going to be extremely ugly and visible for all of us to see forever, so that someone can build and try to get profit, which is questionable, out of 12 measly lots. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Joan Marks.
Thank you. I'm Joan Marks. I live on Palm Drive. I lived there for almost 30 years. I've been through the fire. I've been through a lot of rain. And the fact that I was only given notice of this 6 days ago. So obviously, I am not as prepared as people who did this application. But there's some real problems here. First of all, nowhere did I hear that this money for these proposed drains and the would be in escrow. That all the money it takes to be sure that there isn't water coming down. I don't hear how that's in an escrow account. I don't hear how all these mature trees are 60 and 70 years old and we are going to replace them with little trees. How is that equitable? Then these lots are going to be developed individually. So he's going to grade that area, decimate that whole canyon, and then sit and wait for people to come build on it. Then the trees in these little boxes are going to be put back. Then everyone who is there is going to have to endure the construction of 12 different houses at different times. It is absolutely unacceptable. It happens to be a natural runoff. It's a natural, beautiful area back there. It has the wildlife that Glendora also likes to feel that we are still saving and valuing. So I think that this project is unacceptable on all of these levels and is not needed. And the space for the last 70 years is fine the way it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more public comment cards?
We have no more public comment cards. We do have someone that has used the raised hand icon in Zoom. Mary Ellen, can you please unmute?
Yes, I believe I have muted.
Yes, you are unmuted. We can hear you. You've got 3 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Mr. Travis and members of the commission in particular. In 1968, I was 15 years old and I lived at 852 North Grand Avenue. In 1969, I was 16. And when the natural dams, which had accumulated in the canyons, broke on what we called the Silent Ranch, I nearly drowned. I swam over the top of the debris flow to the back door of 852 North Grand. It was after that flood that the erosion cribs were constructed. And I'm 70, and those erosion dams are still working. You phrased, Mr. Travis phrased his comments very carefully, craftily, I might say. LA County is not presently making a requirement for new debris basins, but for this development. From my perspective, there are 3 issues. Safety. And Mr. Travis, you have done a wonderful job of attempting to assuage the safety concerns. There's aesthetics. We don't want to look at fake constructions up on a hillside when the pride of the foothills is its foothills, its natural appearance, its landscaping. And the third one, to Mr. Chow, is profit, and he's entitled to make a profit off of his land. What order is this commission and the city council going to put on those priorities? I know all our grandmothers put safety first. The community needs more information and more current information, and not notice of a hearing 6 days before. We need the community meetings that were promised and have not occurred. We need the current information, which has not been provided and was promised. Even the city has requested more current information. And by the way, the Robs have no intention of developing their project at their property at this time. I appreciate the work that Mr. Cho has put into this development, but we need more. We will be living next door to a construction site for decades under the current plan. Don't let these debris basins be a blight on a hillside that will last for eternity, really. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other Zoom speakers? Sorry.
I do not see any more raised hand icons. Again, just a really quick message. If you'd like to give a public testimony, please use the raise hand icon at this time. There have no requests that have been submitted, no additional comment cards. Let me just check the email really quick. And no emails that have been received.
Okay. Then at this time, I'm going to invite the applicant back to come up and address the commission and have any closing remarks. You'll have 5 minutes.
Okay. So that was a lot. So let me give us some thought here. First of all, the debris basins are being built in the same location as the existing check dams. It's not that they're going to be way up above and for everybody to see. You won't see them from down below. You would have to literally be standing in front of it to notice. And also the downhill side of the debris basin is going to be hydroseeded. So there will be plants and ground cover and flowers and whatever is hydroseeded there. I don't know if you're familiar with hydroseeding, where you spray a mixture on the slope after it's graded. So when you look up at the debris basin, you wouldn't notice that it's a debris basin. It's going to look like a slope with plants growing on it. It does not, these debris basins will not have a concrete spillway that's visible from downstream. The only concrete you might see is if you were actually inside of the basin looking at the spillway entrance. So hopefully those pictures that are in the packet that we, could give a little bit of an idea of what that's going to look like, but I don't. The debris basins are not going to be way up on the slope. They're more or less at the location where the check dams are, the crib dams are now. And they're not very visible unless you're right there in that development. The mere fact that we're building these debris basins is helping with the potential for to hold the debris flow back. It is helping the situation that's there now. Brent, do you want to have a few minutes here? Can we give him a few minutes to reply?
Sorry, we're going to ask you to unmute, Brent.
Got it. So, first I want to thank everybody who came up. Passion is great. I love people who are, dedicated to the neighborhood and they care about it. There's some things I think I can say. I took some notes here. Fred, you're concerned about a number of different aspects on it. Mary, you said sort of the same thing. I just want to make clear, the reason why those crib dams worked, and they did work, was because there was room behind them for debris to be caught. So now they're filled up. So now what happens is if there's debris, it's going to come off. So they're not safe anymore. And that was, of course, our assessment, but it was also the assessment of flood control. And they felt strongly, and I do too, that these need to be built because they really are. You really are in danger from these flows. We've seen it before. And Fred, you said it yourself in Rainbow that there was a house that was lost. And I think that's a big deal. What else? I can't speak to the aesthetics, but I think that it was just done. I think, I think that's what I'll say unless
I chime in a little bit.
Yeah, Alan, tell me if you want me to cover anything else.
No, I'm okay. To answer Phil's questions regarding water and fire, first of all, we actually, with the city, we work with a consultant. We did all the water study and for the supply of water and also fire. We had a fuel mod. Actually, development is going to help with fire, and there's no extra, stress on water that's been right now. To address the road condition, I worked with the city for 3 years at the very beginning to widen I offered to work with Fred if he's here. So to offer to widen that strip, and it took us 3 years for city engineer and also with the fire to okay it. Meaning that 12 lots is not something that's in excess what they can service right now. There are existing homes right now that's being serviced. Because they feel like it's a shortened distant. In terms of aesthetics, you're not going to see most of the development because everything is there right now. It's that's the reason we actually did Mark did a wonderful job by presenting existing versus proposed. They're identical pictures. We actually have to do an X-ray to show that you're in there. It's a private community, so the city the public is not going to see what's in there. So as far as safety, we're doing it. Yes, the crib wall is here, but Jerry, our geological consultant, was there yesterday, and also as after the Kobe fire, the USGS was there. And crib wall 50 years ago was when it was built in 1970s. It's a wall where it stops the mud flow. Right now, it's filled to the rim. You're more than welcome to come up to the site, and I will take you to see it. It doesn't do its job anymore. If I don't build it, someone has to build it. I mean, Brent, you said it correctly.
Right.
So, that's my saying in terms of safety.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you.
much. At this time, I'm going to ask for discussion and deliberation from commissioners. Any questions we might have? Commissioner Basara.
I'm sorry, really quick, just because we do not have Lana here today, this would be the point in which you would request that the applicant is familiarize themselves and is in agreement with the conditions of approval.
I assume you are, you're familiar with the conditions of approval?
I stated in my opening statement that I prepare to accept all terms and conditions outlined in the city resolution.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Basara.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of questions in my mind at the moment. I think that 12 lots isn't a lot of lots to be considered. But what does disturb me a little bit is that the community abutting this property hasn't been notified or had any meetings with the developer. And all of these questions that they have about what's going on up there would probably be cleared up if you took the time to meet with them and kind of discuss a lot of these questions that they already had. I have more questions, more comments.
Stay here. Stay here then.
I also would like to know why there wasn't any units designed to go on those lots to go with this track map. That's another question I have, so that they know what type of units are going to go there. And I did have a question. Is this an R1 and is it a high fire area?
It is a residential zone and it is a high fire zone.
So it definitely couldn't allow to have an SB9 and an ADU on the property once it's completed.
I know it can do an SB9.
Couldn't have an SB9, but it maybe be allowed to do an ADU because of the width of the roads they're building are going to be fire requirement accessible.
Yeah, I think the determination on that because it's in a very high fire hazard zone would have to be in consultation with fire for safety purposes. But in theory, the lots would be eligible like any other single family lot in the city for ADUs or SB9 units.
This district, for the confusion is most of the hillside lots in Glendora aren't, because most of them are accessible by private roads or narrow city roads that don't meet fire requirements. This is going to be a brand new development that will be required to be complied with the current standards for fire safety. So that's where we're saying it might qualify.
So all the more reason why I would think that they should have some sort of a designed unit for the track map. That's all I have for the moment.
Okay. Commissioner Davis?
Whew, there's a lot to unpack here. Yeah, I too am concerned, and I guess I'll throw this back to staff real quickly. Were there no community meetings?
So I was at the meeting that I
Other
think
than maybe 8 years ago? or
there, it was
whenever?
around 2014 and I was at that meeting and I do believe, and the property owner can verify this, that within this project stopped and started over the past, now we're nearly a decade. And I do recall that the property owner reached out to the adjacent property owners at various times during the development of the project. He was in communication with us. And so there was contact between, and I think the property owner can verify this, between the residents in the area and the property owner about the development of the project.
Okay.
Regarding the required public notice was all done. What's being asked is the
Okay,
additional
yeah, well,
community
there's-
outreach.
There's required and then there's respect for the neighborhood too. That concerns me as much as I've been involved with the Rosedale project or La Colina, whichever side I've been on over the years. There was always a pretty fair back and forth between developers, owners, and the community. Too much so sometimes. I don't know if we can take him speaking at this point in
I
time
don't
or
think so.
not.
No, I think right now, unless there's direct questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so were trees previously cut down?
Believe there were for trees, some trees died. There was some fire related stuff. There was obviously during the decade or more, there's been trees that have been removed. Yes.
Excuse me, we, there cannot be any comments right now.
And as such that we required an additional tree study because the other one was too old, and we ought to accommodate the trees that were probably lost or died during that period. We required an additional tree study to be prepared.
Okay. During our discussions tonight, are we allowed as commissioners to place conditions on any of this as we move forward? Or is this just simply a recommendation to move it to the city council and they would do so with any conditions?
you can modify and make suggestions to, it's a draft resolution.
Good.
I guess I'd be correct in recognizing that the road to the debris basins would be double as a fire road as well. So you'd have better fire access with that road put in. So Colby Fire, as an example, would be more easily fought in that area if that road had been in at the time.
That's probably.
I'm
speculating.
going to assume yes, just
Yeah.
the access is access.
Yeah.
One of the speakers mentioned water rights. Can staff explain to me how that factors into this? What are they? Why don't they have them, or why do they have them, or what part of that did I not see in the
I think two things have come up, but I think they might be interchangeably confused. One is a question of capacity. Is there enough water for the site? Its capacity, and there was also water capacity studies and looking at the lines to make sure there's water pressure and things to get there. That part of it was done. Obviously, for fire reasons, the fire department wants to make sure that the lines can support and the pressure and everything for that. And that was done to satisfactory to the fire department for that part of it. The other one is the water needs of the community, and are they going to pay their share for the development? We have a public works representative here that can maybe help answer that, but they do, and within their conditions of approval, the city does have a standard condition of approval that I think was being referenced, that I think the commenter was saying he wish would be written to be a little bit more tighter or a little bit more stricter, which I can find that. I can comment on that. Maybe I'll just with our public works staff can comment on that condition.
Yeah, because I mean, as soon as you throw water rights in there,
Yeah.
I mean, water's one thing. Water rights lead me to believe that it's a property right somehow, some way. I don't really subscribe to there's not enough water in California. Yeah, there's not enough water, but at the same time, they're telling us we have to allow development. You know, hands are tied. So it's largely an empty argument to me, unfortunately. But yeah, if we could get if there's a water rights, I'd like to know about it. The basin's visibility, I think it's a little disingenuous, and I agree with some of the speakers. All of the views were up close and personal, you know, from Sierra Madre. Well, you know, of course, you're not going to see it from Sierra Madre. Go down to Foothill, go down to Grand, go down to 66, 210 freeway. You know, I would have liked to have seen a view from a little bit further back to see if there is any, you know, visibility for that. Whether there is or isn't, I'm not necessarily in favor of, or would I decline something because you can see it? There's a lot of stuff you see on the hillsides, but to only show the up close and personal, I think is a little bit short-sighted for our purposes. The ADUs concern me a little bit because some of those lots unfortunately can be turned into 3 or 4 units almost, unless I'm missing something through SB 9, correct?
As every single residential, most.
Correct.
in
Yeah,
town, yes.
absolutely. And we talked about this the other day, the backbone in that area, gas, water, electrical, is all sufficient without serious upgrades at this point in time, or are they gonna have to tear Grand up to make improvements?
Maybe our public works staff can help us with the street
Okay.
improvements conditions as well. I believe it's just the area in front of Palm Drive that would be public related.
Okay, the corner. We heard a lot about deferred payments, and one of the speakers mentioned escrow and stuff like that, and we've talked about $500,000 and 500 trees and stuff like that. That's at today's dollars.
Correct.
In 10 years from now, will that price be inflation corrected? Well, that's where I'm at. If it's $49,000 per lot now, is there any caveat in all of our paperwork and all of these conditions that will allow for an escalation of that
It's not based on current fee. It's based on the fee at the time.
at the time. Okay, all right. Size of the trees, and again, the speakers have a valid point. You know, you take away a 70 or 80-year-old tree that's, you know, a foot in diameter or more. What's the size of a 24-inch tree that goes in, 24-inch container?
I think we have Raquel, who's our city.
Well, no, the container is, but the trunk of the tree is not 8 inches.
Yeah, there's two different measurements that if we get too involved in trees, I'll have to defer to our city forester who's on the line as well. Raquel's here. Maybe she can help. better.
Raquel, are you on?
Yeah, the 24, 36 and 48. What are the trunk diameters of those trees?
They
Generally.
vary. Now, am I heard?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, a 24-inch box is typically a 1-inch caliper, usually at the base of the tree. And so typically when you measure a tree, it's at 4.5 inches, 4.5 feet in diameter from the ground up. So that's why it's called breast height. And it's sort of measured differently at a nursery, and it's about a 1-inch caliper from the base of the tree. So this is starting at a 24-inch box, and obviously it increases in size as the box of the tree also increases. And that is the reason for our requirements. They do go up as the diameter of the tree being removed does go up, and it also varies if the tree is a native tree versus a non-native. So oak trees will require, you know, typically for you said a foot, a diameter, that would be 60 inches. And so according to my records, that would require 48-inch boxes. So for every one removal, if you give me a second, I could do a quick search on what a 48-inch box is.
Is it, I'm going to assume it's less than a foot.
Absolutely less than a foot.
Yeah. Is it even 8 inches? It's probably not even 8 inches.
Yeah, definitely not 8 inches.
Okay. All right. Yeah. If you scale that up, it's probably 2 inches from 24. Okay. All right. Is any of the flooded area that was flooded previously, is there any issue with the geology there having been flooded once upon a time? I would imagine that current grading or modern grading should account for all of that. Maybe I don't want to call it loose topsoil, but debris soil that's been scattered around over the years.
I would have to refer to one of the engineers on that one, but I can say that with that area, that the current level where the residential pads area is going is going to get a lot of fill put on top of it. So.
Okay, fill and compaction and okay. How much of this development is on the conservatory land versus non-conservatory?
Maybe we should, there is no conservatory land. There's a land being designated as a designated remainder parcel, which is currently zoned open space. Just for
I thought I heard
clarification.
conservatory in there. Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I don't want to confuse. There's a group in town that there's a conservatory. I don't want to kind of confuse that.
All right, well, that's all I have for the time being. Thank you.
Just to clarify, do you want on the questions on the water fee and the street improvement plans answered by our public works staff person?
Yes, please.
Who do we have in from Public Works? I'm sorry?
Hi, Algis Marshuska with JMD. I'm a consultant for the Engineering Division, Public Works. And I helped the engineering division, Public Works, prepare the conditions of approval, the recommended conditions of approval for the project. And we have those coming from different divisions, engineering, water, and our other divisions. Regarding the water payments, those are determined based on the final service units that are put into the property. Before the final map is actually approved, there would be a requirement and full assessment of the payment. Our water division usually waits until a water plan is prepared and all the services are identified that have to go in for the project. Also, the water capacity and the fire flow and pressure that are required for the project, that was assessed now because that's also a requirement of the Los Angeles County Fire Department. And was there a question regarding the street improvement plan? At the entrance of the project, the street is private once you get into the track, but at the entrance of the project at Palm, there's going to be curb returns, sidewalk improvements, curb and gutter, and then all the utilities that come in and out of the project that are required to be underground, be trenched, and the street there would be repaved.
So it would involve tearing up Grand is what you asked, correct? Yeah.
For utility construction, there will be some construction in Palm and yes, at the top of Grand Avenue.
Yeah, but it's not stretching all the way down Grand Ave. You're not bringing it up from Sierra Madre
Correct. It's
because it's already there for the existing development.
Correct. It's closer to the site near Palm.
And that's enough,
Grand.
and that's enough to serve what's north of it.
Yeah, as far as we know now, the
Okay.
utilities are adequate.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Faber, questions?
Yeah, thank you. I guess I have a question for the applicant's consultants. Is that allowed? Yeah. Yep. And I know there's definitely two sides to this question, but I'm really just asking the consultant, you could tell me which one would be. So the crib dams as they are installed right now, or even when they were installed in the 70s, are those meant to be installed as a maintainable flood control structure?
Brent, yeah. You wanna ask Brent?
Yeah, I'm afraid I can't really speak to what they did in 1970. So I don't know the answer to your question. I guess all I can do is answer it now, which is there's no evidence that I saw that they had, a road going up to there or whatever, to be able to clean it out. It's quite possible that they put them in with an expectation that they would last 20 years or 30 years. That's a typical engineering sort of calculation to make. And then, just decided that it wouldn't be feasible to clear them out. Yeah, so that's the best I can do to answer that.
Yeah, if a crib dam, I would imagine a crib dam's probably no longer like an acceptable.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Faber. I'm just getting some feedback from media. Can you just bring the microphone closer to you? Because we've got folks on Zoom that can't hear.
No problem. I would imagine a crib dam is something that's no longer an acceptable structure to be installed in today's day. But if it was to be something that was installed in 2022, would it be something that you would install and it would be maintainable?
I don't know. I haven't done a crib dam. I've been on site. I've looked at them. I think they look great. I don't know if you've had a chance to see them. I did bring that up with LA County, and I seem to recall they said they just don't use them anymore at all. Could you? The problem I see with using a dam is because what you do with a dam, right, is you sort of you close off an area, a channel basically. And then you allow the debris to just go in there and fill up. Without grading that channel, you're not going to be able to get in with the truck. So you're going to have to pull everything out by hand, or you're just going to have to leave it. So that would be the problem with the crib dam, unless you, of course, excavate it behind it.
Okay. The next comment or comment/question I would have is, so the project's going to be developed as lots to be then sold to someone who's going to build on the site. And there's also an HOA that would start, would have to maintain the streets and the trees and the landscaping, probably maybe before any of the homes are even built, right? And the homeowners would be paying into that fee. How is that gonna start? When is the HOA gonna start? When's the maintenance gonna start? How does that work? Yeah, sure.
It's excuse me, there's 12 units, 12 lots I'm developing, and to be honest with you, I already have buyers for it. So it's something that I'm wanting to move this. This thing took 8 years. I mean, 3 years Covid, I understand, but majority, the 3 years, we're working with Brent with Air County mainly for flood. City, we have 5 sets of people during this 8 years. And I've been trying to work with, I know Fred personally. I mean, he has my number. So, I mean, it is something that I did not know. I mean, I work with my HOA, which is, I spoke to Jack, the president, and none of them are here. They're immediate adjacent. So with this 12 units, I already have buyers lined up. And so I want to build this quickly. I don't want to drag them forever. I've been at it for 8 years already. So, this should, as soon as I have a project, as outlined in the conditional approval, the city's resolution, we need to establish HOA. We need to do all that stuff already. But most of the trees, when I'm doing the grading, once I obtain grading permit, those trees will be installed. Those 400 some trees that we promised to do, we're going to do. And if we find other, things that we needed to do at the time, then I'll be working with the city closely to get this thing done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more and then,
Okay.
then I'm good. So you talked a little about the trees, and I understand, probably not a question. You're
okay.
Sit down. So, I understand the property, it has a lot of trees, right? That's just a piece of the property that's there. So within that tree study and all the stuff that Mark's done and you guys have done together, it seems like the responsibility for the person who's going to build on the property would be a fee of about $49,000 in the current plan. Plan is going to change, it's going to go up, it's going to go down, it's going to move around. The concern, and I think a concern some of the people have too, is if the development starts and then you have lots that sit there and they could take time to be sold, and the next person that builds upon it, you could end up with a dirt lot for a while, which, the builder who's going to build upon it would also, the barrier could be because a large amount of fee, right? I got an extra $50,000 fee I have to pay to build my property. Obviously it's expensive home, but still everything adds up. So the only thing I would think about is you consider it, one of the properties we saw last month, if we count the trees that they had on it, it was about a $12,000 cost of that fee, right? So, it would seem like a typical property of that size is going to plant, 16 to 20 trees of the size we already kind of talked about. And that's, somewhere between the $10,000 and $15,000 range. So then you'd be asked, if we deferred the fee, we'd be asking them to come up with an additional fee, which maybe is best suited by the developer of the property to pay for that portion. But that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Norwood. Questions?
Just a couple. Most of the questions have been asked already that I had. The 49,500 fee per lot that's being deferred. Mark, so is it just, I'm just curious why it's not based on square footage as opposed to just per lot. I guess.
I think
if I'm
because
buying
the
one of
12 lots
and
were-
I got a smaller lot, I want to know why I'm paying.
If that's the recommendation of I'm sure we could do an equation where based on square footage. We
Okay.
just did it since the lots were, we
All
thought
right.
fairly
I just was
comparable in
throwing that
size.
out. The second is, can they use that? We'll go with 49,500. Could we encourage them to plant more trees, more mature trees, so that the person buying the lot that's coming in to pay the $49,000 can also reduce that fee? It sounds like the community, the folks up here would prefer to see more trees. I mean, maybe some folks at the city would like to see the $49,000, but I think we'd like to see more trees.
I'm sure you can encourage it. I mean, I think the from the financial perspective, the bigger the trees you plant, the less money you have to pay. So that's an incentive onto itself.
Say, I know I gotta pay this 49,000, but can we talk about me planting 12 more mature trees and reduce this fee?
Yeah, because I think if you saw that our tree policy is based on the size of the tree for its number. So again, like a 24 was $360, but a 48-inch box is almost $2,000. So there's going to be an incentive for you to upsize your trees to reduce your numbers.
Okay. What I have left are more comments that I'll reserve at the end. And all the questions I had were answered already. Thank you.
Yeah, also the majority of mine, but I am concerned about the communication with the neighbors. I mean, obviously, I understand this project has gone on years and years, and it sounds like there were some community meetings back in 2014 or 2015, but I mean, when you're talking about something that's as much of a part of a community as that area is, and I guess my expectation is that there would have been more community outreach to the people to address some of these concerns, because they're right. They shouldn't have to come to a planning commission meeting or a city council meeting to get that information. So I'm concerned that hasn't happened. And I would strongly recommend that while this process is going on, you set up some kind of regular schedule of communicating with the people in the community, because obviously this is going to be disruptive to them, and it could take a while. And so that would be my suggestion, is have regular meetings with the community, because it sounds like that's a good part of what the concerns are. I don't have any problems with the collection basin. It sounds like, I understand the speaker's point about, this has done its job for 70 years and that's wonderful that it's done its job for 70 years, but that doesn't mean it's going to do its job tomorrow, right? Things break and things become outdated. And so I think it's very important that we're upgrading those to more modern and more efficient standards. I share the concerns about the trees. I won't get into it tonight, but because I know we're kind of because of time, but at some point I'd like to talk about when the city gets those fees for trees. What is the plan for replanting those? Do we have a plan for that? Or is it just, oh, here's $500,000 in tree fees and, oh, who wants a tree? Right. I mean, I'm sure it's not arbitrary, right? So at some point, I don't know if tonight is the time, but I'd like to at least look at, what is the plan for utilizing that money? I agree that I think that the determination for the 49,000, I think it's fine to have the people that are building the houses front that. I mean, these are going to be multi-million dollar homes. 49,000 should not be that much of a greater thing for them, but I do think it should be based more on lot size as opposed to just 12 equal shares. The only other thing that I had, I like the fact that there's going to be an open space reserve. I did notice I think it was Fish and Wildlife's letter about this being part of an area for mountain lions. And so that's part of their natural habitat area, that mountain lions are in that area. And so just my concern is just protecting as much of that area as possible. And knowing that those people are probably going to get mountain lions in their backyard. And, they built in the middle of their home. So that's it for me. So at this time, any other comments, or are we ready to close public hearing? Yes. Okay, sure.
So this is maybe for staff. Can you tell me what the size of the lots are that are just south of the proposed track map? On the average?
I don't know. I don't have that on available. It is a 20,000 square foot zoning. So would you assume those are 20,000 too?
Yeah, I think the whole surrounding area is the same zoning, which is E7 20,000. So that's an estate zone. What that means is an estate zone, minimum lot size 20,000. So the lots in the area are all likelihood at least 20,000 square feet.
Okay, I just wanted to know if those estate lots were built, on larger lots when they were built, because those were all custom lots at that time.
Yeah, I believe that the Silent Ranch subdivision was a semi-custom subdivision of some type. It's a gated community. I don't know the details on that project other than it was in the era of the maybe late seventies, early eighties from the way the houses look.
They appear to be roughly the same proportional size on the south.
Okay.
Don't know what year those went up. Those are the ones just north of St. Lucy's.
Right,
Looking at them, they
just-
look
To the east.
The ones to the,
Actually,
I think they
west
were
of
built,
the
Otherwise.
development.
they were built like in the seventies, I think, yeah.
that's what
I
they,
do.
they appear to be vintage seventies homes from the way they look.
And I have another question. So is there gonna be a dedication on Grand Avenue? So that's set back, or is that gonna be right off of Grand Avenue?
Not on Grand. The access is off of Palm.
Okay, so, okay, sorry. Is there gonna be a dedication or a setback off of Palm
Setback for the homes? Yes.
for the entry into this private
Yes, if you
neighborhood?
saw some of the visuals, they'll have an entryway and the gate for the community will be pushed back.
Mhm.
But there won't be a dedicated right of way. They're going to be maintaining the existing property line. There's no dedication needed for sidewalk purposes or anything. There's already existing sidewalk there. It's not maintained well, but it's going to be replaced, but it stays in place.
So in the track map, are there going to be any conditions for sort of a setback for landscaping or anything like that?
The homes are going to be subject to the standard residential zoning for the neighborhood. So it's the same setbacks, rear, front sizes for all the
I'm not
homes.
talking about the homes or the lots. I'm talking about the entrance to this private community. Is it going to just be like a gate, or are we going to have some sort of landscape area in the front?
The one visual kind of shows how the gate's going to be recessed in with the landscaping. I could go back to it if you wanted to see it.
Yeah, actually lot 14 is actually south of the gate. So there's a whole lot before you even get to the gate.
Mm-hmm. So my concern is because it's not a planned development, right? It's just a track map. I want to know if while there's no houses up there, what are we going to be looking at?
Again, the developer is responsible for all of the roads, infrastructure, as well as the HOA maintained landscaping. So all that you see here on this exhibit that's green, he would be responsible for planting, which would include the gates and all the landscaping and entryway.
Okay, any last comments? Okay. At this time, then I'm going to close public hearing and request. Not at this time, no. Sorry, public comment is closed, has been closed. At this time, I'd like to close public hearing and request a motion. Do you want me to read the whole recommendation? Okay, the recommendation is to open and conduct a public hearing, accept evidence and testimony presented in the absence of substantial evidence to the contrary. Recommend that the city council consider the following: adopt an initial study mitigated negative declaration pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, and 2, adopt a city council resolution entitled "A Resolution of the City Council of the City of Glendora, California, approving tentative track map number 72413, a variance and development plan review for the Grand Estates project located at 950 North Silent Ranch Drive, and certifying the project's initial study and mitigated negative declaration, project number PLN 140024." Can I get a motion?
Thought I'd get a chance to comment, but all right.
Okay,
It wasn't necessarily part of the public hearing.
okay.
And just my thoughts on, and maybe just me personally, I thought we'd have a chance to comment. I probably should have done it previously when we spoke. I view this, you know, lived up there, I would understand the apprehension. But it is a private piece of property and they do have a right to develop it. And honestly, in my 6 or 7 years I've been, 6 years I've been here, this is one of the better presentations and better planning that I've seen in terms of the developers working obviously with the flood control. They can't develop it without the flood control's approval. It just doesn't work. Yeah, the county's not gonna go up and do that. They're not gonna pay for it because they don't they don't really see the need for it, but because of the development, the developer's willing to put the time and energy and financial resources into the flood control improvement. And having working in a municipality for 30 years that sits up on the foothills, and I've seen mud flows. I've seen fire damage. This is a far improvement than what's up there now. And I, as a firefighter for 35 years, the fire danger you have there now is far greater than those 12 homes that are going to be going in, far greater. So I think this is a great project. And I think they've done a really, really good job in terms of working with the different public agencies, fire department, the county, city staff, and things changed. The Silent Ranch went in, and I'm sure the people that were south of that didn't like when Silent Ranch went in. And it just happens. Things change and move forward. So with that, those are my final comments. I apologize for not doing it previously.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to request a motion.
I'll make a motion, but I'd like to add 2 caveats. One, to assign the trees based on square footage rather than just divided by 12. And then number 2 is to hold a public meeting with the neighborhood. I think that will go a long way once this makes it to the council. If we voted in at this point in time, go a long way to the council going forward.
In fact, I would say not just one public meeting, but set up a system for having repeated public meetings so that you can keep the people informed of progress. So with that caveat, you're making that motion to add that?
Is that going to be additional conditions of approval? Or is that going to be just with the recommendation from the commission to assign the trees per the square footage and to initiate outreach to the residents as this project?
I
moves
would like
forward?
the outreach to the residents be a condition of approval. If we can do that.
Their recommendations to council, so.
Okay, that's right.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Those are
add that
recommended-
before it goes
Okay,
to
those are my
council.
recommendation. That's my motion, and that's my recommendation to council.
Okay, great. I will second that motion.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and take a roll call vote. Commissioner Becerra,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Faber,
Yes.
Commissioner Norwood,
Yes.
and Chair Cost.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes 5-0.
Okay. Okay, okay, yeah, let's go ahead and do a 5-minute recess. Okay, we are resuming our planning commission meeting, and we have all of our planning commissioners present. So the next part, we are going to take into account a resolution to approve a conditional use permit to allow service and repairs business Tesla Collision Center and establishing a use with hazardous materials on certain property located at 1332 South Lone Hill Avenue, Glendora. Project number PLN 220083. Applicant is R Vision Incorporated. Property owner is RNH Investments. At this point, I am declaring the public hearing open. And I invite Associate Planner Natalie Espinoza to present the staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tonight before you is an application for a conditional use permit to allow major vehicle service and repairs business, which is Tesla Collision, and establish the use of hazardous materials at said business. The site is located on the east side of Lone Hill Avenue, just north of Gladstone, across the street from Glendora Marketplace. The site is approximately 136,600 square feet and was developed with a 41,000 square foot building in 1963 and was previously occupied by the Ormco Corporation, which was an orthodontic supply company. As you can actually, I'll say that in my site plan. This is the overall site plan. They are keeping the original building. They're not going to add to the building. They are only all of the exterior construction is just going to be adding 2 openings to the on the north side of the building for vehicular access. There will be restriping the parking lot, widening the drive aisles to accommodate fire access, and adding landscape throughout the site. Service vehicle staging areas are located at the center of the parking lot, but will be screened from Lone Hill so that damaged vehicles won't be visible from the street. Most of the construction will be indoors and is submitted to the city as a tenant improvement to remodel the space for a proposed vehicle repairs business. The project consists of 34 service bays, office areas, parts and storage areas, and a break room. The project also consists of updating the facade by painting the building white and gray with red trim to follow Tesla's corporate colors. This is the proposed front elevation. This is the existing elevation. And these are a couple renderings that the applicant provided. Based on Glendora Municipal Code requirements, automotive repair services require a minimum of 1 parking space per 250 square feet, plus 1 per employee. In this case, 209 spaces would be required, yet the applicant is proposing a total of 132 parking spaces. The applicant hired a traffic engineer to conduct a parking and traffic study for the proposed use and submitted it as part of their application. The study analyzes the existing site and proposed use to see if 132 parking spaces would be sufficient for this use at the site. Based on the study and comparisons of other Tesla collision centers, this proposed location would have the greatest number of spaces in relation to the size of the facility. Additionally, the study also suggests implementing transportation demand management strategies to reduce parking demand and greenhouse gas emissions, such as offering free or subsidized transit passes, providing 18 car and van pool parking spaces, also electric vehicle parking spaces, and 1 being accessible, providing 2 interior bike lockers and outdoor bike racks, and providing rideshare vouchers to customers. The traffic engineer also ran the proposed numbers through the city's VMT screening tool and determined that it is below the threshold and will have a less than significant impact. Notices were mailed to property owners within a 500-foot radius, and they were also published in the St. Gabriel Valley Examiner on November 21st. Staff recommends the approval of the conditional use permit to allow a major vehicle service and repairs and establish the use of hazardous materials at the business. And the applicant or representatives of the applicants and I are available if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we invite the applicant, Dima Hamarjad, and I'm sorry if I messed that up, and Pam Cepetto to address the commission. You have 10 minutes.
I'd just like to say thank you for your time and consideration in all of this, and to the staff for getting us to this point. Natalie, thank you for the presentation. We've received and reviewed the conditions of approval and comply with everything that was outlined, and are open to any additional questions that you may have for us.
Okay, great. Is there any public comment on Zoom about?
Thank you. I don't see that anybody that has used the raised hand icon to give public testimony. We received no public comments via email or comment cards at this time for this item.
Okay. So I will go ahead and go to commissioners. If you have any comments or questions, Commissioner Becerra.
I do. I have two questions and maybe you can answer this. How do you intend to screen the yard so that we don't see the cars in?
So we have an alternate spec for screening the fencing that allows for opaqueness and provides discreetness and no visibility outside of the perimeter of our site.
It's not like landscaping or?
No. It's a fence,
Okay,
fence spec, fencing spec.
Okay. And how many employees do you have?
There will be at this location 45.
All my questions. Thanks.
Okay.
Commissioner Davis.
What hazard material are we talking about? Is it the lithium batteries?
There will be lithium batteries, but they will not be stored on site,
So only in the vehicles?
only in the vehicles.
So if I can answer a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah. It's going to consist of paint coatings, thinners and hardeners, as well as chemicals that are used in major vehicle repair businesses.
To Commissioner Becerra's question, is any of the fencing going in here, is it security minded, or is it just a visually block and shade? Because you're gonna have some high dollar cars in there. Will they all be parked inside at night if left over? So they won't be left outside subject to vandalism is where I'm
No,
going with that.
everything will, for security reasons, will be fenced and secured.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Commissioner Faber.
Sorry to keep going on that one, but so the vehicles overnight will all be inside the building or they'd be left outside screened behind a fence?
So the majority will be left in the parking lot area behind the screened fence. And then those that will be, you're talking about overnight.
Yeah, overnight, not during the day, right? Anything left overnight when non-business is happening.
Actually, I have my colleague Joni on the call who could probably speak to this a little bit better than me.
Okay, I don't see anybody with the name Joni. I have Diana Tran, who's raised hand.
Diana, would you like to speak to that?
If you can unmute, Diana. Hello?
Hi there.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Hi. Sorry, I just want to introduce myself really quick. I'm the lead design manager at Tesla. So we will have what's allowed by right, which is vehicle storage on the outside that will be screened by fencing. So the goal is to not have any damaged cars visible to the public as much as possible.
What parking spots would they be, I guess, then that are screened by the fence? Because isn't the fences off of Lone Hill is just the one in that image right there, right?
So, based on the proposed site plan, this is the area that will have the service staging area, I should say. And then there's going to be fencing along here. And then also to answer your question about the security, there's a 26-foot long sliding gate with powered openers across the driveway.
Gotcha. So when the gates close, then. it's all
Correct.
off, you don't see.
Exactly.
Great, perfect. And then the only other one comment I have was just, we talked about, leaving that lot on the northern one where that gate would be. You could make a left turn. There's not an island there. It's not legal, but it seems like it would be a good idea to have a right turn only sign at that.
Yeah, and we've included that on our signage.
Correct. Yeah, I contacted the applicants, I think yesterday, and I let them know, and they did agree to installing a no left turn sign from the driveway.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Vice Chair Norwood, questions?
Outside of turning it into a dealership / repair shop. But I know that's a pipe dream, so I have no other.
Okay, and the questions that I had have already been asked by my fellow commissioners, so I don't have any additional ones. So any last comments or questions from the commissioners? Okay, at this time, I'm going to close public hearing and request a motion to open and conduct the public hearing, accept evidence and testimony presented in the absence of substantial evidence to the contrary. Consider the following: to adopt a categorical exemption for the project pursuant 15301 of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, and adopt a planning commission resolution PC 2214 entitled "A Resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Glendora, California, approving a conditional use permit to allow a major vehicle service and repair business and establishing a use with hazardous materials on certain property located at 1332 South Lone Hill Avenue, Glendora, California. Project number PLN 220038. Applicant Arc Vision Incorporated, property owner R&H Investments. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Oh, who was the first one? I didn't hear.
I'll do it. I'll second.
Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Becerra.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Commissioner Faber,
Yes.
Vice Chair Norwood,
Yes.
and Chair Koss.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes 5-0.
Okay. There are currently no member agenda items. I see no items of unfinished business, and no new business items.
Consent calendar.
Oh,
that needs to be approved.
did
So
I miss
will
that?
be
I'm
item
so
number
sorry.
5. Yeah.
I missed item number 5. Forgive me. Our consent calendar to approve the minutes from the October 4th Planning Commission meeting and the November 15th, 2022 Special Planning Commission meeting. So do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
I will second.
Thank you. That is a motion and a second by Chair Koss. I'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner, that's what it is. Commissioner Becerra.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Faber,
Yes.
Vice Chair Norwood,
Yes.
and Chair Koss.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes 5-0.
Okay, now we can say there's no new business, no unfinished business. At this time, I invite the commissioners or staff to make closing statements. Commissioner Basara, any closing statement?
I want to wish everybody a very happy holiday. I won't see you again until then. And don't forget, we have a Christmas parade on Saturday.
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Commissioner Faber?
Happy holidays to everyone too, and it should be a great time. So enjoy.
Commissioner Davis?
I was waiting.
Okay, sorry.
Two quick things. I want to thank staff for your hard work on both of the agenda items tonight. That's a basket load you had tonight. And then we had talked the other day about an update to the Arrow Highway specific plan. It seems to come up items, issues. We have questions about it every time a project comes before us. And you said something about giving an update in the near future that we would have input to. If you can just speak briefly to that for us in the audience, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so comprehensively, we committed when we updated, as part of updating the housing element, to do a lot of different things. And one of those is to comprehensively update our design guidelines and make them objective. And so that will include areas across the city, including Arrow Highway. So there'll be a chance to talk about the design guidelines for that specific plan as well as other parts of the city.
Okay. Vice Chair Norwood.
I just want to wish everyone happy holidays and we'll see you after the first of the year.
Okay. And I too, I know there's a lot of different holidays that people celebrate at this time of year. So whatever you celebrate, I hope it's joyful and peaceful. And I will be at the Christmas parade. I'll be doing traffic. Management with CERT. So hopefully I'll see some of you guys out there. And it's always a lot of fun. So that's it. So, okay. So at this time, I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 9:17 p.m.